Hey, hi, hello, welcome back. Alexandrine Codex. It is 11:05 p.m. We're doing some Minecraft. Why is this my? You know what? I'm pretty okay with this being a weird daily routine. Like I wake up, I eat tea, I drink tea, I eat tea. I drink tea, I watch something, catch up on the news, stream a little. And I get off stream, do something else for the rest of the day, come back at the end of the day, stream an hour, kind of as an end cap for the day. Holy shit. You doing okay, computer? Let's just nip this in the bud. Okay, you know what? We can just exit Epic Game Store, pretty please. Fucking hog. No, it's fine. It's fine. Trying to speak with some degree of positivity, and it's gone. I had a good day today. What'd I do? I fucking slept. I posted some stuff. What'd I do? Oh yeah, cause I got ambushed by John and Edie when I was. Yeah. Thanks, Steam. Thanks. That's definitely what I wanted when I was signing off. So I talked with them a little bit. They were pretty low energy for the day. Had a big night the night before. So I just caught up with them a little bit. Then I worked out on my elliptical. It's called an elliptical. I remembered that it's called an elliptical. I need to put a fucking sign on it saying, hey dumbass, this thing's called an elliptical. Ellipticals are like very easy to work out on, but if you like, crouch is not the right word, kind of squat while you're doing it, makes it a much more thorough workout for dem thighs. So my thighs still kind of hurt, which is good. That's what I was going for. So that was satisfying. Took a shower. I ate. I was just like really fucking tired all day today. So at like 5:30 p.m. I went to sleep. I woke up at like 9 p.m. And not in a normal way, mind you. I woke up to a Minecraft, you okay, buddy? Woke up to a sleep paralysis stream. Just great. Just the best way to wake up. Just like feeling like I couldn't breathe because a pillow had a small pillow. Like a throw pillow had somehow shifted onto my neck. But I felt like I couldn't breathe because, you know, anxiety. And I was trying to throw the fucking pillow away. And I kept throwing it off of me. But then each time I threw it off of me, it turned out to be a dream. And then I'd open my eyes all over again, try to rip the pillow off of me in like the brief moment of awareness that I had. And then I'd fall back asleep. And I just did that like 8 fucking times before I finally like shot up in bed, gasping for air. Now, see, the part I left out is probably the contributing factor of why I had the paralysis stream. I had an entire pint of sorbet in bed while watching Twitch and had like a quesadilla because I didn't want to actually cook anything. I was just lazy. Like I have fresh red peppers, fresh red onions, I had some tomatoes I really need to do something with. I got some beans soaking right now that I can either just like make into black beans or I can like mash up into bean paste. Got some rice that I have some great spices for. I can can like saute those red peppers or just cut them up and have them raw. Like there's a lot of good ways I can have food right now, but I'm fucking lazy. And it was a low energy day, and also, you know, I was feeling pretty deflated because of finances. And I'll get into that a little bit because I need to talk about that. Or at least I need to give some credit regarding that. So, you know, it was ice cream. It is ice cream. It's like slightly or healthier ice cream, but it's just like frozen fruit juice. Effectively, it's not the healthiest thing on earth. That's probably why I woke up at like 8:30 p.m. feeling like I couldn't breathe. Maybe because I like dumped a massive amount of sugar into my system before going to sleep at an abnormal time after also eating a lot of... fuck. Didn't bring enough wood. Well, alright, guess we're done in here. Didn't bring any wood, as a matter of fact. I was kind of asking for it. I have a lot of sleep paralysis dreams. Or I have had a lot of them this year, anyway. Because, you know, it's been a fucking stressful ass year. So part of trying to be like, okay, I need to think about reworking my diet and actually structuring workouts again. I used to have a very structured workout routine, but then, you know, I got depressed and I fell off the wagon. I mean, not really falling off the wagon, but you probably take my meaning. Taking those steps would be probably positively impactful on my mental health and stress levels, my ability to sleep, my, you know, respiratory system, cardiac health, etc., etc. But seriously, if it did nothing else but make it so I quit having these fucking dreams where I'd wake up only to realize I wasn't awake, only to wake up to realize I wasn't awake, only to wake up to realize I wasn't awake over and over and over, dude, I would do bad things to never have those dreams again. And I don't have to do bad things. The beautiful thing is, all I have to do is take care of myself. Which is whack. Absolutely whack. Take care of yourself in this year of our Lord 2021. Brother, I'm taking care of myself and just not contracting the plague. What the fuck am I choking on? Peanuts? Sunflower seed? Did I even have peanuts or sunflower seed since being awake? You can really tell I'm a very functional human being. Generally, but specifically now. Anyway, finances. I made a post being like, hey, I'm kind of frustrated because it had been 150 days that I was on unemployment, then I didn't hear from them for like 158 days. And then I had this hearing, and I really expected this hearing to fucking do something, but now I haven't heard a word from the unemployment agency, so I've emailed them. I've given them 2 fucking weeks to get something done without being prodded. Because I appreciate that they're busy, but this really seems like it would take 1 day, maybe 1 week to get it done sort of thing. Or at the very least, you could email me or notify me through the website being like, hey, we have received the court's decision, and we are working on it. Nothing. I have heard nothing. And so I was kind of venting about that, and a couple people reached out like, hey, what's your Venmo information or PayPal info? I'm like, okay, I didn't ask. I probably would end up asking by the end of the week, but I wasn't in a place where I was asking yet, but like, I'm definitely not turning down help. I'm just like, I'm still super embarrassed about it. Super embarrassed about needing folks' helps. Folks' helps. And there were some very generous people. Now, I haven't read all the messages, and I haven't transferred any of the funds because I kind of want to give it a minute. Like, it's a little overwhelming in a positive way, but also in, like, an existential way. Like, I'm not comfortable taking money from people consistently. I don't like being dependent on other people. It really makes me feel very trapped and stuck. So I've been like feverishly thinking, okay, I really need to like double down on the job thing. Like, yeah, you know, the plan was get back on unemployment because that should be enough to survive off of, and I'd be most comfortable doing that. But the bureaucracy is taking so long that I'm living literally at other people's expense, and that's not fair to them. That's not fair to... I don't know. I'm always so bad at taking and receiving gifts. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, I want it and I need it, but like other people need it more, probably. And like, maybe I just got it because I whine enough, and I don't want people to like think less of me because I need help. And you know, there's a lot of nested sources of anxiety here. It's not all one thing, it's not all another. And I didn't really have the energy to tease that apart so I could speak articulately earlier today, which is why I'm like, earlier when I was recording, I'm like, I need to talk about some stuff that I'm not talking about because I don't want to. That's specifically what I was referring to. It's really funny, when I posted about like, hey, the court found in my favor, shit tons of people were like, hell yeah, Alex, that's awesome. And now it's 2 weeks later and I'm like, so nothing has changed. And like some really awesome people have reached out, but the total number of people engaging with it is significantly less. And I can't help but feel like this isn't people being shitty. A younger Alex would be like, this is just people being shitty and not wanting to engage with negative content. No, I'm pretty sure this is just because social media sites, particularly Facebook, filters based on the content of what you're writing and kind of low-key throttles stuff that reads in a negative tone. Like, I'm like 90% sure that it does this. So when people are complaining or agitating, they're getting not silenced, but the algorithm isn't rewarding their content. If you call being like, oh god, everything is terrible content. Oh, I've been thinking about that as well. And just kind of thinking about the future, like this, if I can't get unemployment sorted really in the next, okay, due to the generosity of so many people, the window is, now I have another month. I can pay rent, and then I'm gonna be back to square one, but I can pay rent, and I couldn't do that before, so I'm not complaining. It just doesn't feel good when it's not because of any kind of security that I have in place. It's not because of a job that I have or an unemployment program that I paid into. It's social capital made material, which is nice, but I really value my relationships, and I don't want to be, you know, grifting? I don't want to be taking advantage of people's generosity. And I'm worrying a lot about that. I'm being very self-conscious and concerned that, like, how am I going to pay these people back? I know there's no expectation for me to pay people back, but I don't like owing people, even though I owe so many people so much in ways I can never express and never really truly quantify, and even if I could in such amazing capacities and quantities, I could never pay back. But also, like, I don't... yeah, there's some like really weird stuff I need to tease apart there. Like, why do I not like receiving stuff from people? Why do I feel like... why does that make me insecure? I mean, kind of obvious reasons in some ways. Like, it makes me insecure because it's literally a sign of my lack of, you know, security. Yeah. That checks out. Oh dear. Oh, this just kind of dead ends here. Okay. So yeah, it hasn't been a bad day. I've just been stressing out quite a bit. Been having a weird time with it. Am I seriously out of focus again? Or, like, the window preview. No, I'm not. The window preview is so small, and I made me so small that I can't tell when I start going out of focus, so that's why I'm just, like, habitually every 10 minutes looking over and being like, this son of a bitch camera fucking with me again. Right, well, all of this is just, like, a huge mess. There's paths everywhere. Maybe this is supposed to be, like, some kind of plaza? I think it's more that the path generator was like, I don't know how hills work, so just kept on trying to make something happen here. Like, I don't know, I feel very weird about people giving me money when there are homeless people who need it more, when there are people who have children who are struggling to feed them, when there are people who are, like, literally thousands of dollars in debt. Like, I'm so lucky to have people generous enough to give me anything in my life, and I don't want to undersell that. It's just like, man, I really wish... you know, I feel guilty about utilizing this privilege that I have of these connections, of these people who aren't struggling as much as I am, and mobilize them towards something, you know, better than bailing out someone who has a lot of privilege. And, you know, my feet are to the fire, I suppose, but there's people whose, like, metaphorical feet are burning. Right? And it's not a competition, right? And this is a thing I try to remind other people when talking about pain and suffering and loss, particularly. It's not a fucking competition. We don't need to compare our traumas. We don't need to compare our pain. We don't need to compare our need with each other. We just need to accept that we all have different levels of need and try to act accordingly in order to meet those needs. There's a lot of very deeply ingrained, really capitalist American, individualist, exceptionalist kind of dogma that, you know, wittingly or not, unwittingly, you know, for the most part, I've internalized. Oh, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't need other people. I want to be able to be the one taking care of other people. I don't want to be needing care and help and support. I want to be giving that. I want to be able to be someone that people look up to and ask for when they need help. I don't want to be someone who needs help from other people. I don't think any of us want to need help, so it's really kind of a stupid, reductionist way to internalize this. And, you know, I think it's really unhealthy for me personally. It's really potentially toxic for relationships. And I should focus more on ways that I can get back to these people, ways that I can contribute in other ways. Because if I have these kind of internalized values about myself, when I can't contribute, or I'm struggling to imagine ways that I can contribute, then I worry that I might also have internalized biases against people who habitually are in positions where they need help. I don't want that to be true, but I worry that it might be, that this attitude borders on that and warrants some, deeper awareness, some kind of deep, more thorough consideration, I think, is probably how I should phrase it. Just very classic me to be like, listen, I'm never good enough. There's always some way to grow. Always some way to criticize and critique yourself. But seriously, like, I do think that the values that we place on ourselves are not always a one-to-one with the values we put on other people, but it is, it does point to the way we think, and the way we internalize things, and the way we perceive things. For better and for worse. So yeah, I don't want to be an ableist asshole towards other people, and to my knowledge, I'm not. I don't want to be an ableist asshole to myself either, but I kind of am. If other people are struggling with depression, I just remind them that I'm here, that I love them, that I care about them, that I want to be around for them. But when I struggle with depression, often it's like, why am I still dealing with this? I know I can do better than this. I know that I can just push through this. I'm weak. This is a, sign of bad character. I should just be able to power through this. Why can't I do what other people do and just push on through? Why do I buckle under pressure when other people don't? How could people look up to me or respect me when I'm, clearly yada, 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 yada. I don't have those values when it comes to other people, I think, and I hope. But I do seem to have them towards myself, and especially when I do like the idea of myself as, friend therapist for a lot of people. If I'm unable to walk that walk, there's some serious hypocrisy going on. Some serious hypocrisy going on if I have such difficulty accepting help, but I want others to be charitable to themselves. And there's definitely a thing too. We tend to give out advice that we ourselves would really benefit from taking. It's easier to help other people than it is to help ourselves sometimes. Whew, what is going on here? I have no fucking idea. I don't like it. It's just a big mess. This is just a big fucking mess. I don't know how to smooth this out, so I think I'm just not going to smooth it out. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna do this instead. Yeah, so that's sort of being receptive to other people's gifts and charity. One person, a friend of mine, Luke, I hadn't looked at how much he had given me. I was like, hey, I haven't looked at this, but seriously, it's generous for you to offer to give me anything right now. And he fired back with it's not generosity, it's mutual aid. And I'm like, okay, but you are being generous in having the empathy to engage with that kind of redistribution model and thinking about that kind of material exchange. And, you know, I haven't replied to him, like I said, because I have not really had the capacity for these conversations I need to be having. But now that I'm awake and I can't just sleep the day away anymore, that's probably what I'm gonna do after I get off of here. I'm gonna sheepishly stare at the responses for a long time and go like, Alex, just need to bite the bullet and respond to people, and they'll be like, I know, but also like, I'm a big baby. Now I'll get around to it. The sheep eating shit back here? Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, you getting that grass. Yeah, so that's a good thing to do after this. Unfortunately, me waking up so early after taking a nap, I have no idea how the fuck I'm gonna sleep tonight. I think I may have torpedoed my sleep schedule. Just a teeny tiny bit. So I'm gonna have to come up with some other stuff to keep me occupied for the rest of the night, but that's not unusual. Not unusual at all. One of the first things I did after waking up was flip on Seattle Protest Network, which is just an amalgamation of streams of protests in and around Seattle and the United States, quite often Portland. But tonight, you know, there are protests going on in Tacoma. So I was watching that for a while and getting some low-key flashbacks to summer of 2020. It's really, really hard for me to watch or listen to people talk about, like, being worried that they might be hit by a car. Now, that is, like, actively triggering for me, and I really wish that it wasn't. Like, viscerally. I mean, obviously I wish that it wasn't, but that was not a thing I imagined walking away from last year with. But it do be a way that I feel. Yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that. Just that was kind of my introduction to the world today. Seeing fucking people, politicians posting about, like, riots going on in Seattle. There are no riots. There's not even a protest going on in Seattle. Seattle, it's raining. There are protests going on in Tacoma. But no riots. Like, even the Tacoma PD didn't declare there to be a riot. No riots insofar as I'm aware. And oftentimes, when you see rioting, when you see direct action,
but it's not a thing about making actors.
Man, they are giving me so many with VO. I do not want the VO. Police start riots. Typically, violent incidents start with police exercising their monopolized use of force on people protesting police brutality, and then those people who are protesting police brutality protest in more direct terms, let's say. And none of this is news, and I really don't need to go off on this right now. But you know, this kind of background, this kind of atmosphere, every time you hear something from America, it feels like it's falling apart. It's because it is. Our country is definitely on the decline. The American empire of the 20th century is never coming back. We have a lot of people who are having a very hard time in accepting that. A political and power structure that's built on being a neo-colonialist, imperialist power. And we're faltering as a country. We're definitely faltering as a country. And more and more Americans are waking up to that reality. But there are still so many stubborn people who insist that things are just gonna magically get better now that we have a new president and a new administration. But our societal ills, our structural inequalities and equities, and, like, etc., etc., they run so deep that without meaningful reform, we're just going to continue to decline. The real question of debate in the United States amongst people who are paying attention is how long and how quickly that's going to happen. Just because an empire falls doesn't mean that, like, everything's going up in flames. The British Empire fell, more or less, right? And they had some hard years as they adjusted, and they're still having some hard years because some people refuse to adjust. We can transition out of being a global hegemony and into being a global partner. Being a country that focuses our wealth and material and energy on caring for each other and social programs and things like that. But we're not engineered to do so right now. What we're engineered to do is fight against it. Fight against decline with, like, every dying breath, because the people who stand to lose the most are the people in power, and the people with money. And the people who stand to gain the most are the people with little money and little power. Yep, no, you're exactly right. The new president is not much better than the old one, except being less hated. He's more polite. Donald Trump was and is a criminal. A business tycoon kind of criminal. A slumlord kind of criminal. Joe Biden is a politician kind of criminal. One that works with moneyed interests, businesses with a lot of money, to move their agendas forward, to stymie real social, political movements, to try to maintain the status quo, mostly. And that's really who we had a choice between in the United States. Someone who was borderline fascist, and someone who is a conservative and a centrist, masquerading as a liberal, whose interests are pretty similar, in effect. He doesn't want things to... He told people while raising money for his campaign and speaking, when he thought it was just a private group of investors, that if elected, quote, substantially nothing will change. And I really do think that's the truth of what we're looking at. The only kind of reform... Yeah, there's some stuff that's a little wonky. Like, there's some photos of Joe, like, smelling people's hair or holding people in ways that seems, like, very inappropriate. But I don't have anything else to make a judgment call based off of other than those images, and I do think they're very problematic and troubling, and, like, how the fuck did this creepy old dude get elected president? What the hell? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, both Trump and Biden have people who claim that they had been sexually assaulted by Biden and or Trump. Not and or. Biden or Trump, not and or. That'd be something else entirely, huh? It's not good. Neither of them were good options. There were only bad options. The good option we had was Bernie Sanders, and right now Bernie Sanders is chairman of the Budgetary Committee of the Senate, which is actually huge, because if anyone would use that position in the Senate to actually push through any reforms that benefited, you know, typical Americans, working class, lower class Americans, it'd be him. So that's a lot of what my hope is like centered around right now. Just that vain hope that Bernie will pull something out. But it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad that that's what we're looking at. The Joe Biden ran on a platform of, or not Joe Biden, Democrats got a couple of senators elected running on a platform of $2,000 checks for everyone for stimulus relief. Once in office, Joe Biden immediately pivoted to, no, we meant $1,400 checks, just to make it so that the previous $600 checks were equal to $2,000. Now, the conversation is $1,400 in 2 months. Let me be explicitly clear about this. For many people, like myself, $1,400 does not cover 1 month's expenses. It barely covers 1 month's rent, but when you take utilities and food into account after that, it doesn't. It would be better than nothing, and we've been given fucking nothing over the course of this pandemic. And it really seems like nothing is what we're going to continue to get, which is just horrible, horrifying, and horrible, and just kind of inhumane. So yeah, the United States, it's not doing well. It's not doing well because its people are not doing well. I mean, we've had more people die in the last year than we had die in the entirety of the Second World War. Our economy is as bad as it was during the Great Depression, and getting worse. The government's not doing anything. These acts of police brutality embolden other racists and fascists to take action, which is demonstrable and not just speculative. The increasing amount of people who are radicalized on either side of the political spectrum, both fascists and leftists, is huge and unparalleled for 100 years of American history. The last time we saw this was the early 20th century, late 19th century. And it's good for leftists, right? We're seeing a lot of organization. We're seeing a lot of growth of leftist movements and ideologies, but we're also seeing a corresponding rise in fascism, which is not great. Yeah, no, so when I say fascist, I'm talking about, number one, key component of fascism is authoritarianism, anti-democratic. If you look at January 6th of this year, we had an attempted anti-democratic insurrection. So it was authoritarian, right? Minimally, it was authoritarian. What else qualifies fascism? Fascism is often based in a sense of nationalism, national pride, and pride of national identity. Typically, this nationalism also is associated with some racial identity component. And in the United States, we see that overwhelmingly, that it is overwhelmingly white nationalist. And not just authoritarian, not just nationalist, not just racist, but also the economic model that fascists adhere to is basically capitalism taken to a logical extreme. The state and capital working in tandem to produce profit, not necessarily at the benefit of the populace, but at the benefit of the state. There's a conversation to be had on can nationalism ever be good? I'm staunchly in the department of no. Nations are fictitious things. And how did you even get in here? And nations only stand to separate us rather than bring us together. But that's not a hill I'll die on. Like, that's not something I very strongly care about. And fascists are also, getting back to what I was saying, characterized by their relationship to capital and power. That they work with capitalists, they work with the wealthy, they work with the elite to help to consolidate that power, embolden that power, and control the working class through populist rhetoric that imitates and borrows language from leftist movements, leftist ideologies, but in spirit does not embody any of those ideologies. So I don't throw around fascist in this sort of anyone who believes in any sort of authoritarian worldview is fascist. I'm throwing it around in a very descriptive, very prescriptive, very specific capacity. There's this notion that fascism and communism are very similar. They really are not. Like, if you 30 years ago were talking about fascism in the United States, it would be more of an exaggeration then than it is now. God, just having an organized, literal, not figurative, literal attack on... Okay, I guess I'm doing this now. On a core democratic process in order to install a specific political figure in power who had lost an election. Buddy, that's some fascist stuff. Well, right, and the strict definition of fascism is basically what I'm operating under. And you know, like, we can be more specific about this, but typically the dictionary definition of any word is not going to be very substantial, right? Fascism is a form of far-right authoritarian ultranationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, strong regimentation of society and the economy. A strong regimentation of the society and economy is really interesting because this makes it sound like a really centralized state structure, and in some ways it was, but also it worked in tandem, especially in Germany and in Italy, in tandem with free enterprise and bolstering that free enterprise meaning landed capitalist moneyed interests, forcible suppression of opposition. I mean, literally, in the United States, these organizations have had kill lists against people that they identified as national traitors or race traitors or traitors to the nation, and they have used literal... we have had fascists shoot leftists in this country and kill them in the last year. We've had them run them over with cars. We've had them take all kinds of extreme violence. Characterized by dictatorial power, that was literally what was trying to be installed January 6th. And none of this is in any way divorced from what's going on. The strict definition of fascism is literally the material reality of what's happening in this country, but it's not thrown around because fascism is a scary word. We talk about fascism, we talk about Nazis, and oh yeah, we beat the Nazis, fascism is dead. You can say you've seen violence from both sides, but how many people have BLM killed? And how many people have the police killed? Who has a monopolization on violence? Who uses violence initially in these interactions? The state. The police do. Oh god, I don't even want these fucking oak stairs, but I guess I'll keep them. I guess I'll keep them. And there's a very interesting conversation to be had here, a very important nuance to understand. Black Lives Matter and anti-fascists often engage in direct action. Direct action meaning non-violent forms of protest, right? I don't understand this insistence on peaceful protest. When you see Paris and people storming Capitol buildings there, lighting fires, fighting police in the streets, firefighters lighting themselves on fire and punching out the cops there. That's some rad shit. Here in the United States, if you see something like that, people will start losing their fucking minds. But we're not killing anyone. Leftists are not killing anyone. Leftists are not targeting people with violence. They're targeting businesses. They're targeting structures. They're targeting institutions, but they are not targeting individuals. And that's a very, very important distinction. Violence as a word gets a lot of play, and I think too loosely, far too loosely. When we talk about violence, are we talking about property destruction? Are we talking about lives? Because that's really the distinction that we are socially arguing about right now. Leftist ideology could be summarized succinctly as people over property. I don't think there's much room for a debate about it. We've reached the point where if there were a time for debate, it is long since past. My nation is in a state of crisis, and that state of crisis, unless materially impacted and changed, is just going to get worse. I live in a country with the richest people on earth. These richest people have the capability to liquidize their assets and feed my country for generations, to house my country for generations, to pay off all student debt, to remove any need for foreign intervention. I mean, they could liquidize or resolve, like, all credit debt. They could eliminate poverty and human suffering in very real material terms. Liquidize. You know, you're right. I didn't mean liquidize. Like I said, I've been awake for like an hour. Liquidize their assets. Liquidating something rather than liquidizing something. Liquidating something is turning a investment or a material asset into a currency, rather than liquidizing something means to. I mean, wait a minute, aren't they mostly interchangeable? They're very similar words. There's some minutia of distinction there that is not clicking right now. But I mean, it is minutia. Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to. You've never heard of liquidize as a word? Oh. Yeah, liquidation. To liquidate, liquidize. I think are just like interchangeable forms of the same word. Liquidize. is another term for liquefy. Liquidate is specifically in finances. Yeah, so they're mostly interchangeable. English, again, perfect language, no problems whatsoever. Is that a bit better? Yeah, that's a bit better. There's no one who's taken seriously on the left in my country calling for violent revolution. There are people saying that they're being met by violence, that the state is subjecting them to violence, and that they are reaching the point where they feel like they have to resist in kind with violence. But it is not a militant movement overall. Overall, it's a movement of desperation, and a movement of desperation that may be pushed to increasingly radical stances, but isn't there yet. When we talk about violence, you don't understand how they're interchangeable? I mean, one specifically referring to doing it with finances, one is referring to turning something into a liquid, which is what the other one is referring to, but only specifically in the context of finances. Colloquially, I think they're understood to be the same thing. It communicated the same idea, so it's the same thing. Functionally, it's the same thing. I'm not a lingual purist. Talking about violence, though, it's very interesting when we look at capitalist models, capitalist modes, what kind of language and examples we have of violence, and the attitudes that we are encouraged to have regarding violence. Specifically, and I've talked about this at length before, so this is going to be retrotting some old territory. Violence is anything that causes harm to another person, directly or indirectly, right? It's such a useless word because it's so broad in its potential applications. Poverty is violence. Prejudice is violence. Punching someone in the face is violence, right? But if you have the means to end poverty, even for one person, and you don't do it, you're willfully allowing another human being to suffer when you could stop it, when you have the power to do it. Now, you know, if you only have the power to stop it for like one person, or 10 people, or 100 people, then maybe you could be understood to be doing it out of ignorance, or just not knowing how to utilize your resources. But when you have the capital of a small country, and you don't do it, there's nothing accidental about that. And we don't seem to take issue socially. There's a society when the state allows banks to throw people out of homes onto the street where they are very likely to freeze and starve and die, all for the sake of money that they didn't have. And, you know, there's a conversation to be had about private property versus personal property that I'm not digging into right now, but that's a very important distinction. Basically, most modern leftists want abolition of private property, but a restoration of protections of personal property. Basically, private property is stuff you own with productive capability and capacity that you don't need. Personal property is your fucking toothbrush, or your computer, or your family heirlooms, or your coat. Yeah, so when we throw around the word violence, what I'm trying to demonstrate here broadly, specifically I'm trying to speak to the ways in which violence that movements, leftist and revolutionary movements use is often, in their perspective and interpretation, a response to violence being issued against them by the status quo, and they are lashing out in violence because they feel that they have been met by violence. Now, I tend to agree with that assertion, but whether you do or not, it's just that I'm trying to share the perspective. I think, regardless of personal takes on that, we could be doing a lot more for, not you and I specifically, but we, you know, the grand we, the social we, the societal we, could be doing a lot more productively if we use more specific language when discussing violence. We use property destruction, or, you know, manslaughter, or attempted murder, or attempted homicide, rather than acts of violence. Because my police department characterizes vandalism as an act of violence. And not vandalism as in breaking windows, that's property destruction, but vandalism as in writing on concrete with chalk, they consider violent. It's such a useless word because it can be twisted to mean just about anything you want it to mean in some context or another, that I feel I'm gonna have a pretty hard time. God damn it. I didn't mean to right click on that. We're really hard pressed, I think, to have a productive conversation about the actions or inactions of various bodies and entities when we're using such a loaded, overused, kind of useless term. Yeah, vandalism is definitely a weird one. Basically, they just characterize as an act of violence so that they can, you know, actually hurt protesters and arrest people to try to scare them into going home and shutting up and being quiet. It's about controlling dissent, this monopolization on the use of force, more than anything else. I was reading Vom Krieg on war by, oh my god, yeah, Karl von Clausewitz. I was reading that on YouTube a while ago, and in that, I dig into Clausewitz, and Clausewitz is not like some weird thinker that only academics know of. Now, Clausewitz is like the poster boy for modern military thought, a lot of modern political science. Clausewitz wrote a lot of modern political, socio-political, and strategic doctrine that is now taken for granted. Clausewitz describes war as essentially being when two parties are in opposition and trying to coerce the other party, and it can be one-sided, coerce one other party into submitting to their will. And that's pretty much it. Using force. Now, typically when we think of war, the typical shared imagination is that force is deadly force, but that's not necessary in Clausewitz's definition of warfare. And Clausewitz's definition of warfare is the same warfare definition that Marx used, and they were not quite contemporaries, but they were close to the same historical period. So when Marx is talking about class warfare, yes, he's, you know, talking about class struggle, more specifically, but also he's trying to characterize an existing state of affairs as already being violent, as already being destructive, as already costing human lives, as already being wasteful, even. Jesus, 35? Did I break up some stuff, or was there just a lot of wheat? I think there was just a lot of wheat. Economic sanctions are an interesting tool, right? They can be a good tool, But when you use economic sanctions to punish the leaders of a country for their policy, whether it be, you know, deplorable policy or not, but it's an authoritarian government, like is so often the case, and what the sanctions actually do are hurt the populace of that country and not the government of that country, I question the efficacy of it. But I definitely agree there are times where it can be effective. But, you know, that's kind of out of the scope of what's possible for people in the United States right now. Right now, when these protests are being characterized as violent, we need to look at successful protests, successful revolutions, successful political movements, specifically in the context of the United States, because of course that's the kind of groundwork that we're working on. That's the kind of background that we need to draw from, the kind of playbook that we need to look at for what works and what doesn't work, right? And well, what has worked in the United States is violence. Not just property violence, but meeting state violence, meeting institutional violence with force. Like the civil rights movement in my country did not happen because white people suddenly decided, oh yeah, let's give rights to people that we've stripped away rights from for centuries. No, it was because people were organizing and representing a very real threat to the power structure that the government did any degree of concession at all. And it was an incomplete concession and, you know, leaves a lot to be desired, but... And you can look at, I don't know, the abolition of slavery in my country. That did not happen peacefully. That did not, in any vague way, happen peacefully, right? Humorously enough, there was the potential that it might, but it didn't. So, in the United States, what we've been taught by the few centuries of history that we have is the real way to accomplish meaningful, lasting, impactful change, to push politicians into meaningful action, is through meeting force with force, meeting violence with violence, and not taking this mythical upper way, this mythical higher road. In United States history, we're taught about, in public schools, we are taught basically a deified fake version of Gandhi, of Martin Luther King Jr., of other reformists and revolutionaries of the 20th century. And the way that we're taught about them is like, oh yeah, they didn't use violence, they said that violence was bad. But they also weren't the only people working at the time, and like MLK was considered violent at the time. There are newspaper articles of a caricature of Martin Luther King Jr. standing in front of like a burning street, burning businesses, and talking about like, oh, we plan to have another peaceful protest tomorrow. The political cartoon basically inferring that like the protests weren't peaceful, they were all destructive. MLK at his time was treated by white society as a thug. He was one of the most hated men in America when he was assassinated. But we're taught a very romanticized vision that like, oh no, you know, they were just peaceful, and eventually we woke up and realized, oh my god, they're right, we've been wrong, we've been monsters this entire time, what are we doing? Come on everybody, let's fix this. That's not how it fucking happened. But that's the narrative that we've been taught, and the model by which it has been told to Americans that it's appropriate to protest. So I am not an advocate for violent direct action. far from it. I think violence of any degree should really be a last resort. There's nothing romantic about it. There's nothing beautiful about it. It's just wasteful. Even if nobody gets hurt, it's wasteful. And if people get hurt, then, like, it's antithetical to leftism. But I will not take a position where I'm gonna be a purist and say that other people are wrong for doing what they think is necessary, because I do believe that a variety of tactics, a variety of strategies, a variety of approaches and organizations are necessary for successful movements to happen. I know I'm on a soapbox a little bit, but when talking about violence, I do gotta cover a lot of ground. And we are about at an hour. I'm having a good time, but I should probably cut it off here and get to something more productive for the day. I think in 2019, 2020, I don't remember exactly what you're referring to, but yeah, lynching specifically was protected in, like, some archaic state law in the South, I think, and hadn't been made illegal until very recently. And there's stuff like that all over the United States. Like, fuck, the Constitution for the state of California made slavery legal so long as it was with indigenous people. That didn't last for very long, but there's examples of this kind of horrifying structure that's just gone on ignored for hundreds of years. Yeah. I do want to say I definitely appreciate the questions, and it's not my position that people should agree with me. You don't have to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. I think there's a lot we can learn from people who think and perceive the world differently from us, who have different values than we do. Just so long as we're not threatening each other. But there is a point that I resonate a lot with, where there are people in the United States who, on the far right and on the left, who feel that there's no more room for productive conversation, there's no more middle ground, there's no more compromise, that things are reaching a very absolutist point. And desperation will definitely drive people there, but you know, insofar as when I interact with other people, that's not what I want to project. What I want to project is all of these are teachable moments for us to understand one another better, and I think that's one of the best ways we can use our time. One of the best ways that we can use our time, anyway. So I do want to double check, make sure we are at an hour. We are. We're at an hour 8 on the recording, hour 10 on the stream. So I'm gonna kill it here. Threatening people over the internet is weird, yeah, and like it's happening all the fucking time in my country. Not like a little bit, like all the time. A city councilor here in Seattle, Kashma Sawant, has been receiving death threats for years, and they're just accelerating and accelerating. She's receiving death threats because she's a person of color, she's a woman, and she's a socialist. And she's on our city council, and so a lot of people have been targeting her. I mean, for fuck's sake, in the last year in the United States, we've had an attempted kidnapping of a state governor, we've had an attempted insurrectionist coup to deny the democratic, republicanized democratic election of our president. We've had, oh my god, I can't even write a list with the kind of violence and normalization of violence that we're seeing. So I like to end these on a positive note, but yeah, it's a scary time. It's a time full of potential, though. Moments of transition, moments of change like this can be moments where something new and better is built. Hopefully not on the ashes of what came before. Hopefully we can be reasonable enough people to recognize that change is necessary, change is inevitable, and the best way is through meaningful, immediate, substantial reform, but we'll see. I'm pessimistic. So anyway, I'm hopping off of here. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back on, God, at some point tomorrow. I'm about to torpedo my sleep schedule, or I already have by taking a nap. Wednesday. Dishonored. I forgot the name of the word. The name of the game, the word for the... Dishonored. Blades in the Dark, we're recording them, I'm uploading them. I'm getting to the point where I might start making the videos live. So we might do that. In the next couple of days, tomorrow is just going to be a clusterfuck of me trying to get a hold of the unemployment insurance office. And probably being put on hold on day and not getting anything useful out of the interaction, but at least I can say I called and tried. So I have no idea what I'm streaming or doing then. Yeah, so stick around. I'll probably post on Twitter if I'm doing anything interesting. These Minecraft things I'm not posting because I'm doing it so often. I don't want to spam people. What was I gonna do? I'm gonna go respond to people and be nice and not ghost out of anxiety. So yeah, have a wonderful evening. Until tomorrow, probably. I'm gonna say toodaloo. Take care. See you then. Bye-bye.